Howdy, Dean Tenant of Information Highwayman here, and you know you can call me Non. Welcome to the first edition of the Ace of Spades Friday website review for 2011. Today we're going to be looking at www.4dproducts.co.uk, and we're going to be taking a squiz at it, compliment of James. So thank you, James, for nominating it to be cut on. What we're going to be looking at today is, and I apologise for this, James, how not to make prospects feel welcome. Now, the reason that I've titled it that is because this website contains a number of issues which together combine to sort of address some key problems with websites that can make users feel unwelcome, turn them off, make them want to go somewhere else, basically not make them click the links that you want them to click and actually lead to sales. So, following the standard food algorithm that I use, F stands for first impressions, and I think that you'd agree that as a first impression the site does actually look pretty good. It's fairly attractive, it's professional, the colours are pleasing, everything lines up nicely. It's not flashy, not hugely flashy, but it's nice to look at, and the grey is offset by just enough yellow for emphasis, but not without either of those colours overwhelming the design. So, as in terms of first impressions, I definitely want to keep looking, I don't want to go away. However, O stands for orientation, and here we run into a problem. The homepage is largely comprised, as you can see here, of a flash presentation. Now, there is nothing wrong with that, but it doesn't answer the sorts of questions that users want to know when they first come to the site. Most of all, and most importantly, where am I? This presentation here is not answering the question, where am I? It's giving me some pretty pictures to look at, and it's giving me a couple of keywords, for example 3D CAD design and concept design and so on, but it's not actually answering any of the most important questions in my mind. There's lots of unnecessary information as well. It's not just a case of what you don't tell people, but a case of what you do. Here we've got, for example, client feedback. This is the first thing you see on the site, and it's not something which I'm going to necessarily want to know first of all, because without knowing what the site does or what the company behind the site does, client feedback is almost irrelevant to me. So I'm having to piece everything together from the clues that are given to me. And here's another thing: although the presentation is structured like a rotating carousel, which with each of these images moving by and then coming back as it goes around the loop, there's no ability for me to manipulate it myself. I can't actually stop it and pause it and so on. So especially when I get to the front page, the first image, this one here, when I'm reading this client feedback, I've got this sense of urgency like I get when I'm reading captions on TV or TV credits. Well, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to finish reading in time before it disappears, and I can't actually pause it to make it stop. Navigation does give me additional clues as to what the site's about and what the company does. However, I have to piece it together again. There's nothing concrete to tell me specifically what I'm doing here. And the tagline, great ideas, great product design, and great results, doesn't really tell me a great deal at all. And it's also quite hard to spot because of the very low contrast. So I would strongly recommend a blurb to explain to new users where exactly they are, to prospects what they can do, why they'd be interested in doing it, what your company does that's interesting to them. That applies for any website whatsoever, and I know I've mentioned it in previous reviews, but it's a very important point. If you don't actually explain to prospects where they are and why it should interest them, they just aren't going to stick around. They're not going to try to piece together all the clues, or they're not going to go to your about page. They simply will go away. Obviously that's a generalization, some of them will stay, but of course if a large number of them are disappearing because they don't know why they should stick around, then you're going to be losing a lot of prospective sales. The second O is objectives, and here again we run into some issues. For example, the show info buttons here down the bottom of the page are kind of in the wrong place. A, they're too small, and B, they don't follow the natural eye path. It's true that people will stick to the left-hand side of the left column of your screen as they're reading. However, in this case, there isn't really any reading going on, so the eye has a natural tendency to track diagonally down from the top left to the bottom right. So, having said that, the get in touch today for your free consultation objective is in the right place, but it's outside of the page, which means again that the eye is naturally going to tend to ignore it. It's also not terribly large. There's not a lot of padding around it, and there's not a lot of space to kind of give it emphasis. It's just sort of sitting there at the bottom like a little tab. The other thing to keep in mind with this Get in Touch CTA is that it's probably not an ideal call to action, because prospects, especially if they don't know what they're doing here, what the company does, aren't going to want to get a free consultation. A free consultation is quite a threatening way of approaching prospects, despite what you might think on first glance. I mean, I offer free consultations in the sense that I'm doing this right now. It's a free consultation, and I do get follow-up work from that. But if you're actually asking people to get a free consultation from you, there is a strong feeling of obligation in this kind of setting. That's one of the reasons that I do my consulting, or my free consulting, in the format that I do. I allow everyone to see it so that I can present it as something which is open to all, rather than a one-on-one thing where there's a lot of obligation involved, even though you know that it's free, and even if they say it's no obligation. So I'd suggest a less threatening way of getting people to get in touch. If they want a free consultation, it's great to give them the option, but I'd also suggest that they have the ability to just get in touch with you, and even a less invasive way of getting to know you would be some kind of white paper or free report, which would be very ideal, because that way people can download it and peruse it in the comfort of their own home, make a decision, their own office I should say, make a decision as to whether they want to actually get in touch with you at all. Okay, here's another problem with objectives. What happens when I click on the news link? Whoa, okay, the navigation has completely changed and I have no idea where I am. How do I get back? Well, I can click the back button, of course, but in terms of continuing forward, I'm pretty much stumped. I just don't even know what's happened. The site still looks similar, but the fundamental structure of the navigation has changed. And you know what? I know why that is, because, there's actually up here a primary navigation that I didn't even notice when I first came here. In fact, it took me clicking on this page and thinking, whoa, where am I? Surely there must be a way to get back without having to click the back button. Where's the home link? And then I noticed it. Look how small and unobtrusive they are. Yet this is actually the main navigation. And this is a problem that I see on a lot of sites, is that the navigation is split into two sides, or two sections. You've got your top navigation, which is actually the primary navigation, and then you've got your vertical navigation in a sidebar. That's all very well, but what happens when the vertical navigation in the sidebar is really obvious because it's right next to the content, but this navigation doesn't stand out because there's just nothing to separate it from the page. There's no contrast. There's no contrast. There's nothing to tell me that it's even there. So I have a tendency to ignore it. Okay. Desirability is D in our food acronym, and I realize I'm running out of time. Desirability here is low because the issues of orienting prospects and giving them objectives that they are interested in are not being met. Here's a good way of testing the desirability of a page. Click the About Us link. Have a look at the About Us page on a website and you'll get a good idea of the general desirability of the site. They tend to correlate closely. Here we've got an About page which is amazingly confusing. The content is not text, it's images, and where the actual content is, it's stuck in the navigation. The navigation's disappeared and I'm getting content in the navigation bar. That's really weird. It's also not very compelling content. It doesn't tell any kind of story, and it doesn't seem to be about people. It's all just keywords. We offer a comprehensive, cost-effective product development service for various industries. Okay, that's great, but how about giving us some specifics? What is it that you do? What is a comprehensive product development service? What does it mean to say that it's cost effective in this particular case? I mean, that's a very generic statement. You can give concrete examples to tell people exactly how it's cost effective. What the heck is a product development service to begin with? I mean, product can be anything. As for various industries, okay, why don't you just tell us what industries? That would be, if I'm in an industry that I'm looking for a product to be developed in, I want to know if it's an industry that you service. I don't want to know if it's a various industry. Anyway, One last thing about desirability is that the font size here, as on most websites, is far too damned small. Have a look at this. Can you even read that? I mean, I'm sitting here on a 23-inch monitor, and this is at full zoom, which you'll notice I've changed in the format of my screencast. I'm now just doing it full screen, and I can barely read that. In fact, is that Daresbury or Dalesbury? I don't know. Alright. What we've learned, before I get to comments, questions, or hate mail, is that there are a number of points that you need to look at on your website if you want to make sure that prospects are feeling at home. Now, this isn't a comprehensive list, but this website does give us some good ideas. First of all, make sure that you have a welcome blurb to explain where prospects are and why it should matter to them. Make sure you don't have the wrong information presented when they first arrive, information that does not matter to them. Make sure that they have control over elements that should be interactive, like carousels, otherwise they'll feel a little bit angsty. Make sure that if you've got separated navigation, you haven't made your primary navigation, or even your secondary navigation, invisible in some way. Make sure that they're both really clear, so that people know what to do and where they can go on your site. Make sure that your copy isn't stilted, especially your about page. Your about page is such a great place to tell your story and to get people interested and excited about you and to demonstrate how you're different and unique and exciting. But so many people just fail utterly in this regard. Make sure that your calls to action are clear and that they are desirable to your prospects. Don't give them calls to action which they don't want to actually click. Make sure that any forms that they want to get, any forms they have to fill in, or any methods of getting in contact with you are non-threatening, so they don't feel obligation, or if they are willing to feel obligation, that's fine, and go ahead, but give them a non-threatening option as well. And lastly, geez, font sizes. Every single site I've looked at, I think, has had problems with font sizes. Okay, people, enough is enough. 10 point, too small. 10 pixels, too small. 16 pixels or above. Got it? Okay, good. Comments, questions, hate mail. Come on, hate mail me about the font size thing at least, people. non@informationhighwayman.com. And you can subscribe to the Ace of Spades at www.informationhighwayman.com/Ace of Spades. It's normally an email every weekday, and on Fridays you also get the screencast to boot. And that is pretty much it. Goodbye from me.